Welcome to the Fulfilled Code podcast, your go-to resource for professionals in healthcare and beyond, offering valuable insights on funding, mentorship, coaching, and grants while helping you prevent burnout as you navigate your innovation and entrepreneurship journey. Today, I'm particularly excited to introduce Ben Roberts, an accomplished innovations advisor at Medlink Midlands. With a strong background in driving healthcare innovation, Ben plays a pivotal role in supporting startups and established companies within the healthcare and technology sectors. He's particularly involved in the West Midlands Health Tech Innovations Advisor. It's called as WMHTIA, which is designed to support the growth of health tech businesses through mentorship, resources, and strategic funding. Ben's expertise also spans sustainability, grant funding, and the integrations of digital solutions in healthcare. I'm thrilled to have him here today to share his valuable insights on healthcare innovation and the future of Medlink Midlands. Ben, I'm really grateful to have you here today.
Yeah, thank you. I'm thrilled to be on it. They were some very kind words, so to start off by saying thank you for that. But yeah, really looking forward to diving into this and discussing all things healthcare innovation.
Super. So to begin with, can you share your journey that led you to become an innovation advisor at Medlink Midlands?
Yeah, so I kind of start with my academic journey. So I went to the University of Liverpool and studied medicinal chemistry. I was always really good at sort of the physical sciences, but more interested in the kind of health side, like what we understood about the body and how we could kind of use that to create medicines to improve health and things like that. So medicinal chemistry was quite an interesting one, and I think I set off with I'll lead into pharma, I'll go be creating the next class of drugs and things like that. But towards the end of that, I've started to kind of explore the more interdisciplinary side of research and realizing that the specific sciences don't work in silo. They interchange quite a lot. And actually, when I finished my MChem at Liverpool, I then went to University of Warwick to do an interdisciplinary biomedical research project, which was a really exciting one because they basically took chemists, physicists, mathematicians, gave us a bit of extra training in biology, and were like, go and solve some problems that are challenging in health and life science that chemists, physicists, and mathematicians could help with. That led me to doing a PhD at the University of Warwick in interdisciplinary biomedical research. I was studying the effect of the time of day a drug is administered and how well that affects the ability of it to get into the brain. So looking into the blood-brain barrier and how pharmacodynamics, pharmacokinetics are affected by circadian rhythms. It was fascinating. I had a really, really good time. Spent a lot of overnights in the lab as well. The issue with studying circadian rhythms and how things change over 24 hours is you have to be in the lab for 24, 48 or 72 hours at a time, constantly monitoring. I think I started to really see the impact science had as well on the sort of real world health systems as well. And I was keen to get more involved in that and really explore routes into that. So actually, I took a 3-month break where I went to work for the Parliamentary Office for Science and Technology. I was supposed to be going down to London for that, but unfortunately a little thing called COVID came about, so I had to do that from my office on my home office in Coventry for 3 months. But working there was fascinating and very eye-opening as well. Things like basically taking high-level science and then trying to condense it down into layman's terms for the people that are actually going to be making laws, making these decisions. It's a lot more challenging. It's basically translating between two different languages. And I think one of the statistics was less than 5% of MPs now did science beyond GCSE. So they're all intelligent people. They've got their expertise across, but actually making them understand the biology and how that can affect and the decisions that they're making is going to affect healthcare and outcomes, I thought was really, really important. I kind of got this knack for then public engagement and that sort of real world impact of science. I started doing more work through the interdisciplinary side of my PhD with WMG and their Institute for Digital Healthcare and looking into how that could sort of integrate. And they did a lot with the University Hospital, Coventry and Warwickshire. So I'm starting to get more bench to bedside kind of work and more realizing that this research needs to have an end goal. You need to have something at the end of it to make it kind of justified and work through. And yeah, as I was coming towards the end of my PhD, starting to write my thesis, and most importantly, I think my funding was running out, I started looking for jobs. I was looking for something that would help encapsulate my love for science, love for healthcare, that I could have a variety and work with lots of different projects, but also had that real world impact. And luckily, Medlink Midlands were hiring for an innovation advisor at that time. So I'd applied to that, explained that I'm coming from academia. That's my main background, but I've seen innovation, I've seen research, I speak the language of academics and public and parliament and the kind of policy side of things as well. And I'm really keen to learn on how to sort of transform this research into businesses. And yeah, that was kind of what led me to here. And 3 and a bit years later, still in the role, taking on different responsibilities, learning something every day, meeting new people. And yeah, it's a very rewarding career so far.
It's been absolutely interesting. I was part of their program called DTech. You probably know about that. And again, in the last month or so, I'm kind of exploring their AI program. So with your one of the specialty as a sustainability lead, how do you integrate sustainable practices into healthcare innovations?
So one of the main things that we kind of try and look to identify when companies come and speak to us about this is this sort of triple win. Now, I'm sure a lot of the people listening will know that when you're developing something for healthcare, you need it to have healthcare benefits. That's the main reason for it. And particularly if you're looking into the NHS and kind of public healthcare systems, you want there to be some sort of cost saving, cost effectiveness or cost benefit. We're now starting to look at how actually your innovation could have a carbon or green benefit as well. And where that kind of comes from is the NHS looking to reduce its carbon footprint. The UK as a whole, government came out and said we want the UK to be net zero by 2050. So any a big reduction in the amount of carbon that we're using and any that we are looking into ways to kind of offset that. The NHS then took it, say, a step further and decided they wanted to be the first national healthcare service to be net zero. So they set the targets for 2040 for things that they can directly control and 2045 for things that they can influence. I think very, very big targets, but I'm glad to see that the NHS and the government kind of using that power to push towards a more sustainable future in this country. What we are able to kind of help companies do is there's sort of 2 routes to look at it. The first is actually what is the carbon expenditure of their business. That's things like mileage, that's things like manufacture, deliveries, but also like the energy in the plants or in their offices. Identifying that, looking into ways to reduce it, and that then builds into carbon reduction plans, something that the NHS and actually other kind of tenders are now asking for, is giving about up to 10% weightage in some NHS procurement tenders now, that there is a carbon reduction plan in place to show that, look, we've measured our carbon, we know where we are now, this is where we'd like to be in 5 years, this is where we'll be in 2030, 2035, and hopefully net zero by 2040. It's something that the NHS are looking for, and we can just kind of start that conversation, link them into some people with a bit more expertise on the actual savings, but really, I guess, just that knowledge piece. The second side is really how you can discuss and, I say, maybe pivot or reshape your innovation as actually a green innovation. So take remote monitoring, for example. 4% of, a statistic I learned the other day is 4% of all traffic on the road is linked to the NHS. So one of the biggest carbon emitters for the NHS is all the traffic linked to it. Everyone that drives in is adding into the NHS's carbon footprint. So if you could actually have some sort of remote monitoring, whether it's a device, whether it's telemedicine, or something that removed the need for that patient to have to drive in, not only are you improving efficiencies and improving healthcare because you're seeing them sooner, but you're actually reducing the carbon footprint of the NHS. And we're very good at identifying where there are these sorts of savings, whether it's an easy example like reducing the need for travel, or whether it's improving a pathway that would then have less waste or less time in hospital. Obviously, every day has a rough kind of carbon cost, and looking into ways to kind of identify that not only are you having a healthcare benefit, But if you're getting people out of that bed for a day, then it's reducing the carbon cost as well. So there's lots of different routes to explore, lots of different resources and lots of different people as well to speak to really kind of solidify that. Life cycle analysis being a big one, especially for product-based innovations, but then also looking into how services actually can improve efficiencies across the NHS.
It's very interesting. So essentially, when a new innovator was to have his own innovation precisely reducing the carbon footprint, they could get a preferential, I wouldn't say treatment or get the grant funding, but certainly they would be looked upon kind of more, they would be looked upon better than somebody else, isn't it?
Yeah, so I was asked to review some SBRI grants for healthcare. It was some really interesting ones going forward. But obviously they have the sections in the different sections of the questionnaire of the application form. One of the bits was on sustainability. I think for this specific one, 5% was towards net zero. So looking at what the company is doing and are they setting up a carbon reduction plan, as I mentioned in the kind of first channel.
Yeah.
But then the second bit of how is that going to help the NHS? How are they going to help the NHS, and how are they going to help healthcare systems perform more sort of greener moving forward? And that was given 5% weighting, which might not seem like a lot, but the standard for some of these grants now is very high, that the difference could be you've actually looked into it, you've got this kind of detailed answers, and you can demonstrate that this is something that you're looking into, versus you just answered it because it was on there. And yeah, if that's the difference between two very similar products or very similar applications that are on similar scores, looking into sustainability, thinking about it earlier could really help. And then there's also sort of benefits to actually, if you're looking outside of things like the NHS. I mean, one of the points mentioned is that Gen Z, if your customer base, if you're going direct to consumer, Gen Z like to see sustainability. Apparently they're non-negotiable on it and will want to be supporting more products in that space. It also helps kind of push with more initiatives and potentially even access to other grants.
Okay, so even in the future, after this innovative product becomes available as a marketing tool, you could use your carbon footprint being zero as a potential USP, yeah?
Yeah, definitely. I think it certainly will help, and I think certain either clinics or some trusts as well are actually kind of pushing ahead. University Hospital Coventry in Warwickshire host some events that are all about the sort of the future of healthcare and what the future hospitals might look like, and they really try and showcase innovations that are more leaning towards sort of sustainability, so improving health but also doing it in a way that isn't harming the planet so much, which I find really kind of inspiring. I guess the other route that we actually been able to help support some companies with is potentially it opens the door to more funding for you, in that you might have seen local authorities or organizations post about kind of green grants, like we want to support innovations that are helping improve our relationship with the planet and things like that, and think, oh, I'm not developing that, I'm just developing a telemedicine app. But actually, going back to that previous example,
yes,
by having telemedicine and reducing the need for travel in what most likely is probably a petrol or diesel car these days and things like that, you're immediately impacting and helping the NHS align or make it to their target. So therefore you are a green innovation, and actually you might be able to access, even if it's £5,000 to £10,000, significant funding to just help kind of work towards your development.
That was an interesting fact. 4% of traffic on the UK roads are related to NHS.
Patients driving in, the doctors, it's the supply chain, it's the drugs being delivered across pharmacies. So much is involved in it, and it's kind of a low-hanging fruit at the moment, especially as we're moving more towards digitization and sort of telemedicine, remote monitoring.
Pretty good. Ben, Medlink Midlands recently became a delivery partner for a £14 million WMHTIA program. What does this role entail, and how do you contribute to its success?
So this came about through the previous government as part of their sort of levelling up agenda. They looked across the country, decided we want to start supporting more innovation outside of London and the southeast, southwest. So they looked to the West Midlands, they looked to Manchester, and they looked to Glasgow. Gave each of the combined authorities a bit of funding. They then sort of disseminated that across a few different projects, the biggest of which was actually here in the West Midlands, and that was the West Midlands Health Tech Innovation Accelerator. Doesn't get any easier to say, and Wahumtia isn't the nicest, but we'll go with it for now, Wahumtia. And basically this was combining all of the big players that we have in the region to create this sort of pipeline for innovators. Medlink were one of 22 delivery partners involved in this program that really tried to combine the academic, the clinical, the business, to really sort of one-stop shop for innovators to come along, apply for it. We'd identify what support was available and where we could and where resources would allow, be able to support them moving forward. Medlink, we played kind of three major roles amongst this. The first being our events program. So we were asked to deliver the events through the sort of 2-year delivery of the program, in which we delivered over 26 events, which saw over 1,500 attendees from 750 unique companies. So that alone just kind of shows the size and scale that this program had. We had intimate cafe networking towards the start of the launch, which I remember speaking to you at. But just networking, people learning about other innovators in the region, other support methods, and actually kind of forming some bonds. Because I don't think anybody likes going through this alone. It's good to be able to chat to other people and see what they're up to, see what struggles they're having. And I think they're very important. But then it's gone all the way up to, we recently were presenting on the IMAX screen at Millennium Point in Birmingham as part of Birmingham Tech Week, showcasing the most recent plug and play cohort, discussing with some of the biggest buyers in healthcare, so private healthcare and big organizations, talking about what they want to see and the successes of the program and how that aligns. So it's been really fascinating. We've had more specifics. One of the key things about this event program that I think makes it different to a lot of others is that we try to keep it dynamic and tailored to the companies coming through. So instead of planning it in advance and saying, oh, everyone's going to come and everyone's going to come along to these events, what we actually did was we waited till companies started to apply, told us what their struggles were, either through the application or through our initial meetings with them, and said, actually, what is your major struggle? Because if everyone's already sorted with one thing, there's no point running an event on it. We really wanted to actually answer the questions that they had and solve the problems. So we ended up running them on things like IP, because that was one of the concerns. A lot of the companies coming through not with a strong IP thing. That was with Shoesmiths, and we were actually able to then facilitate sort of one-to-one meetings with a team of patent attorneys, legal advisors afterwards. So it was knowledge-based, it was networking, but then also specific support. And that carried on in things like regulatory affairs, talent retention, lots of different events. The other side of the events was kind of cluster formation. So obviously looking and seeing all these companies apply, we really started to see what are the sort of strengths, what are the main groups. Things like antimicrobial resistance, we have a very strong network for here in the region. So we've now run 2 innovations against AMR events as part of World Antimicrobial Resistance Awareness Week. That's a big thing that I think is kind of being downplayed at the minute. So really interesting to see some of the innovators coming in and actually the scope that they're going to have. But yeah, this events program's been super successful. We're very proud of it, and all the feedback from the attendees and their reviews has been positive. So really looking forward to maybe running some more of them in the future.
Yeah. The next point is about grant funding. Now, I've been in the innovation sector trying to innovate things, and I've got 2 products. One is a knee balancer, the new one is a digital product, and grant funding was the biggest of the hurdle. How does Medlink support healthcare entrepreneurs in navigating grant funding, particularly, which I feel is the biggest troublemaker in our journey?
So I think one of the starting points for that is we, across the team, so it's not just one of us or 2 of us, it's everyone across the team is looking into the opportunities out there. because there's so many different pots, so many different organizations, websites, newsletters, all these things that could be a bit overwhelming for an innovator or an entrepreneur kind of just starting out. Obviously, there's the big ones like Innovate UK, but then you get smaller with some of the NIHR, SBRI grants, but then even things like EU funding. I don't know how many UK innovators are kind of fully aware that even though we've left the EU and we were sort of kicked out of Horizon, we've actually become a partner now again in the UK, so we can start applying for more programs there, more grant funding there, whether it's the Pillar 2, where you kind of partner with either universities or organisations across Europe and New Zealand. Weirdly, they're also on paying members, but you can partner with other organisations, or there's some that you can apply for in silo. So if you've got something that is novel, that is going to change the market, EU can still fund it. So it's one of the main things that I think we do is help you find the right one. And as I actually go back to the sort of the green grants and actually help you maybe access ones that you didn't think were for you, and seeing if there are ways that you could pivot into something to access some more funds.
Sure.
That's the first one, is that sort of funding finder. It's just that support. And once companies kind of come into our network, if we see grants come up that we know would be good for them, we try and fire it across as soon as we can. So take AMR, the network that we've been building there. When we see AMR grants come up, SBRI recently had one, we'll let them all know and just say, look, if it's something you want to chat more about, let us know, and we can kind of help develop in that side.
Sure.
I think one of the other things that we kind of look into is actually how we can potentially support them going forward with that. So with universities, we kind of write letters of support as to be the sort of business side. But at the same time, if a business is unsure if they've got the capacity or capabilities to deliver this, or they're looking for delivery partners to support them with it, because a lot of the time, if you're going for a grant, say £50,000 for regulatory affairs, you might need a quote in there or 3 quotes to show that you've got this kind of competitive landscape, you're getting good value for your money. Across Medlink's network, as well as innovators, we have a lot of service providers. And you can actually use kind of one of our web pages as a portal to say, look, I want to apply for this. I need 3 quotes on regulatory affairs, and our network tend to respond quite well to that. So it helps develop the grant and develop the bid moving forward as well.
Okay, great. Ben, what do you think is the biggest common theme that you see among innovators on the grant funding side of things? Where do you think we go wrong?
So I think one of the things can be around sort of like traction and the real world demonstration. I think if you've developed something in silo and are saying, I think this is going to be great, it's going to save the NHS with all the trouble that they're having, but then there is no real example of when you've engaged with the NHS, when you've worked with them. Even if you kind of have as a sort of single innovator and NHS clinical entrepreneur program and things like that, trying to explain that this is not necessarily just a problem for you, but a problem with other trusts that you've engaged with. I think it's really important to demonstrate the sort of that market pull, that market need, and the likelihood of partnership going forward. So it's not just supporting an idea because it sounds like it could be good, supporting an idea because it sounds like it could actually take off and it could be adopted moving forward, that there is that interest. I think it also builds a bit more, say, credibility off the back of it as well, showing that you're getting the expert advice, you're getting the networking in there, you're building partnerships with key stakeholders across the NHS, across academic institutes and other research organisations. I think that just gives a lot more confidence to the reviewers and to the funders that what they are funding is going to lead to tangible kind of outcomes and impact, which is what they're looking for.
Okay, great. Can you give an example where Medlink helped a innovator which led to a strategic success, if you like, of that particular business, which has kind of gone into a revenue-making company now?
Yep. So there's an organisation called Blue Sky AI, which use some machine learning to analyse facial and vocal expressions, aiming to improve quality of life through better understanding human behaviour. So mental health, either diagnosing and tracking and things like that. Interestingly, they're now also looking into sort of air traffic control and pilots and things like that as well. just to kind of pivot and access other routes to revenue. But when they were sort of setting out, their main focus was healthcare, was monitoring and stuff. Back in sort of ERDF days, Medlink was able to kind of help them access some grant funding, and they actually won an innovation grant, which enabled them to develop this technology further. I think this was about in 2022 or maybe 2023, so not too long ago. But actually since then they've actually secured, I think, about £3.4 million worth of venture capital, expanded their team from 14 to 28, and actually launched some new software as well. So it's really shown that early stage of support, that help in development. And I think they were one that when they came in, they needed some quotes generating as well from our service network, that we were able to help them to get the funding. And yeah, now they're flying high, both in.
What is the one thing that they did right you feel has led to their success?
I think it's the partnerships that they were working through, and certain stuff that I think Medlink were assisted with. I guess another example that I can sort of demonstrate is, again, the same innovation fund that came through ERDF went to a company called iEthico. So they were focusing on addressing medicine shortages, and developing this kind of, I think it was blockchain-based platform that enhanced supply chain transparency across pharmacies. So if one was having a shortage, it would immediately kind of flag, and they'd be able to deliver them across so that there was never those shortages and things like that. The grant funding helped them to advance their platform, make significant impacts, and kind of continue to grow through that as well. And I think when they were applying, obviously linking into the pharmacy network, linking into other kind of NHS connections was a really strong point for why they were sort of chosen for the grant, because it wasn't an idea that they wanted to push forward. It was a idea that had that bit of traction and demonstrated within the application that if it was to get this funding, this is what it would do and this is where it would lead. And that's what we wanted to see with those funds.
Okay, got it. Okay. So in your view, Ben, what are the key trends driving innovation in the healthcare sector? I mean, is it digital product, or is it the old gold standard medical device type of innovation? What do you think has better legs from inception until getting a success?
So I think there is definitely more of a push now to precision and personalized care. I think it's not so much a one size fits all with a lot of innovations. It's how can you tailor this to the individual, and whether that's done through sort of more service delivery and kind of software and that sort of tech, I think is becoming more common and more favorable, because I think it improves adherence and it improves kind of information as well, which is the results that we're looking for. So if someone is told to follow a strict diet following consultation with the doctor, if there is an app that is either using, say, AI or some sort of machine learning and has chatbots and becomes aware of the kind of person scenario, like I would say, like a human probably would be able to if they had the time and resources to, then it makes them much more likely to kind of stick to it. And they're the results that we're seeing. So I think a lot of the successful innovations that we're seeing are ones that are taking into account who's using them, why they're using them, what are their hurdles, and how can they make sure that this is actually something that they want to be using or want to stick to, at least in those sorts of patient-facing innovations. And I think that kind of angle of, so it's PPIE, patient and public involvement, is becoming transparent across all sectors now, that even if it is something that the patient necessarily won't have that much of a say on, making sure you're aware of who's going to be using it and what they actually want from it. I think you can design a product, you can design an amazing product, but if it's not something that is really benefiting the person using it, whether that's the clinician, whether that's the nurse, it's going to be difficult to get that adoption. Whereas when things are developed with them in mind, it certainly helps with that sort of procurement, with that, oh yes, this is a much better way of doing it, and I would prefer to do it that way because these are hiccups I've had, rather than just being told you have to do it this way now or you have to do it this way now. So when developing, I say maybe tools for surgeons, making sure that it's something that fits into their clinical care pathway already. You're not asking them to change. You're not asking them to document twice as much now because your software that takes notes isn't fully embedded. So actually you're doubling the time and things. So I think one of the major driving forces is that patient and public involvement angle, but also the human factors and that sort of design element that makes people want to use it as much as the healthcare benefit.
Yeah, it's very interesting you say that, because when I conceptualized my knee balancer for knee replacement surgery, it was small fry. Steve May Russell was the gentleman who got us thinking. I've got a number of surgeons involved who have looked at the pathway. And the one thing that they liked was whether they use the tool or not, the pathway that they use to do a knee replacement does not change. So that's very interesting you say that.
Yeah, and it kind of just comes down to, like, I guess, knowing the market. Um, it applies to all things out, even outside of healthcare as well. But knowing who's going to be using it. One of the, I think, first things that I learned when I had initially joined or was looking to join Medlink was that you could develop some amazing software and an amazing tech platform that had all of these fancy features and things. And then they asked, oh, what platform can this run on? And the answers were, oh, all the up-to-date ones. We're developing it on the latest Windows, the latest iOS. It's going to be great. And the trust then came back and said, well, we still use Windows 95. So if it can't run on that, we can't adopt it. We can't implement it. Which I know there's a few issues in that in itself. And there is maybe a more systemic way of approaching that. But knowing who you're designing it for makes a real big difference on that adoption, on that development stage. And I think, as you say, knowing where it fits into a clinical care pathway, how much are you actually asking them to change? There are some scenarios where change is needed, but that is a very big undertaking. You're asking for a lot of moving parts there and a lot of kind of institutional change and things. So actually, is there a quicker way? Is there an easier way to embed yourself into the current side? And just as you mentioned, small fry, one of the best stories I think they tell, and I don't think they'll mind me stealing it, they were developing with a company called Quanta, a home dialysis machine. The idea being sent out, the idea of patients fiddling with these wires and things like that wasn't ideal. And I think they identified that there was over 1,200 potential user errors using the device as it first was. And actually, they managed to reduce that down to double digits. It was somewhere between 12 or 20. I've got the 2 in my head somewhere. But I think they've won a design award for that because it's fantastic. But being able to kind of take such a complex system, simplify it so that people are comfortable using it. And actually, of the, say, 12 issues that there still were, brief training on it actually removed the majority of them as well.
Wow.
So the reason that is now an adoptable and a successful product is because people can use it. It was designed with them in mind, not designed for them just to use. Like, it wasn't designed solely as the technology of, oh, you can now have this home dialysis. It was designed of, you can have this home dialysis in a way that is easy for you to understand, implement, and actually use.
Yeah, got it. So my digital solution is currently, let me backtrack slightly. Us doctors, when we use the digital product, I can tell you they are so painful to use. If we were to be sitting with patients, our time is stolen from our interaction with the patient in trying to click an application 25 times before we get an output of a simple thing would be ordering an X-ray. Is the patient walking? Is the patient safe? Is the patient taking this, that, and the other? Finally, the clinicians who use it, if they can't have that user interface being made very friendly, it just basically ends up not being usable. And that's one of the things that I'm trying to do, is to conceptualize from the user's point of view and then basically making the journey better. Because, if we were asked to use a new tool and if the journey was better, there'll be very few people who would say they don't want to use it.
Yeah. There's multiple routes in as well to kind of support that. There's just knowing the network of clinicians, which if you do, just asking them, getting some opinion and things, depending on who the user is as well, even just kind of testing on friends and family can be a start. It's not the sort of best, but actually in the across the Midlands, there's a lot of kind of user testing, human factors, PPIE organisations that can support you, whether it's through the universities. University of Stafford, I know, has got a particularly good simulation system and things like that, but also MD Tech at University Hospital Birmingham run a lot of support like that. And even if you don't think your innovation might be the kind of thing that needs to be tested, it's worth just exploring. I think it's University of Staffordshire have an ambulance one for kind of ambulance care. Obviously, a lot of workers trained there that will simulate a cold, wet night, that there's been a car crash, you need to use tests. So if you've got a device that needs to be tested and it's going to be used by paramedics out in the field, trying to help someone either out of a car or that's been hit on a busy road when it's cold, wet and windy, is it something they're going to actually want to use, or are they going to chuck it away, go back to the standard methods because they don't like the buttons, or they don't work in the rain and things like that? And it just really helps identify flaws that you might have when it comes to that pilot, or when it comes to real world evaluation, just be able to have that testing first.
Yeah, no, got it. So on that token, Ben, what advice you would offer to a healthcare entrepreneur aiming to bring innovative solution to the market successfully, so that the journey is very calculated, intelligent, and leading from a good kind of innovation into a successful kind of venture as such?
So I think my key piece of advice for any healthcare entrepreneur aiming to bring innovative solutions to market is don't do it in isolation. Healthcare is incredibly complex. It's a very variable field. Navigating it on your own can be overwhelming. So instead, use your local, use your regional, use your national networks of support that are available to you, whether that's through general kind of business support through some of the combined authorities, whether it's linking into the NHS, the health innovation networks. All of these organisations will at least have a conversation with you, will at least be able to tell you the kind of support that they're able to offer, experience they might have knowing similar organisations that have been through. They might even be able to tell you that what you're doing has already been done, or there's someone 2 steps ahead or something like that, and save you a bit of time in that aspect. Ideally, not only will you get the support, but they might say, actually, I know someone that's doing something that's going to complement that really well. Maybe the two of you could have a talk and you actually develop a combined service offer that can see both grow. And that's where one of the things that Medlink are very good at, the sort of connectivity. I mean, it's in the name, it's link-ups, and identifying whether this is something that needs to speak to a university to maybe help with a bit more of the research, or something that needs to go to clinical, or kind of that more business side. But even in the sort of business element to it, there's IP, there's regulatory affairs, there's legal, there's all of these little bits as well that you might not have considered. You might have considered, but might just need a bit more detail, or it's worth just maybe having that 30 to 45 minute chat with someone to kind of steady you, or send you a more kind of directed journey with that, and maybe even help you kind of prioritize exactly what the next step is. Like at your stage, is it best to spend more money on the development? Is it best to spend more money on the designing or the user interfacing, or even the market research to find out who it is? So yeah, I'd say have conversations, go to networking events, join webinars. Some of them might seem a bit tedious. You might not always get something from them, but it's worth going to them, because you might find a business partner, you might find someone that you're going to work with later, you might see potential competitors or potential customers, but I think you will learn something at least that prepares you for questions down the line.
Yeah, on one of the innovation programs, I met in fact it was these guys within 6 months successfully launched a company, and they're doing really well. So they wouldn't have met had it not been that kind of networking.
We were working with a company, Flexi, that were developing a new sort of plastic. So they wanted to get medical grade plastics that was compostable. So when something is used, instead of it being chucked to landfill, could be composted, reducing the carbon sort of footprint from it, and just reducing the impact of medical devices on the planet. They were great. They came and spoke at our innovation day, but we actually linked them up to an organisation called Amy's, who did a lot of plastic molding, and actually they've combined to create like a new service offering. So the plastic molders will make your device with this new plastic, which is something that they were sort of struggling with, is actually finding the right people to take on the plastics, because a lot of innovators that are developing a product don't necessarily have a say on the materials. They just find the manufacturer that will make it. So that was really good, but it actually led to some equipment sharing, which helped with the development and the improvement of the product, and some of the R&D going forward as well. So they attended the event, we linked them up, we saw a potential for that, and it led to a really fruitful collaboration.
Yeah, that's interesting. How do you measure the success of the initiatives and the programs that you oversee at Medlink, Midlands?
So there's a couple of factors we kind of look into. As Medlink are a not-for-profit, we're not doing it to generate as much revenue as we can and pay shareholders. What we're looking to do is improve the economy in the regions, both West and East Midlands. And a lot of the initiatives that we've done, we're able to kind of look back, see the results from, and demonstrate them. So previously, when we were working with ERDF, we were able to kind of say that for every £1 that we received through public funding, we could directly link that to about £47 of direct investment into the region through the companies. So the support we gave them enabled them to actually win grant funding, receive private investment, partner up and start generating revenue, all of which we could kind of link back to our support. So growth like that is certainly an important feature. Other elements are obviously things like job creation and safeguarding as well. I don't think that's necessarily always seen in the same light, but as important now in the times that we're living in. But it's looking into the money that's come in. It's looking into co-investment as well. So actually, as we're giving time and we're asking our partners and our patrons and members to come and support as well, how much kind of free support is given to the companies does have a monetary value. They're actually, although they just think they're getting a bit of time, if organisations are coming and speaking to them, that's a few £100 worth of support. I think if I could take the West Midlands Health Tech Innovation Accelerator as an example, I think that's given out about £2.5 million worth of grants to the region, which is fantastic. We've seen 100 jobs created or safeguarded through that. We've seen 20 new high-tech companies set up. We've seen about £18.3 million leveraged in private investment from the cohort that we brought in, and then about £28.4 million of co-investment unlocked from the support that we were giving, the support that our wider network was giving, and money kind of coming into that. So in terms of a return on investment to the region, we said £14 million given in, returning basically £40 million worth of financial side, but protecting jobs, creating new companies, which actually then makes it a bit more of an exciting region, potentially brings a bit more spotlight onto it, a bit more, a few more investors ideally, but then also actually more businesses that locals could start to work for, whether they're high-class jobs in the R&D side or high-knowledge jobs, but also requiring sort of supply chain and all the other bits that come along with that. I mean, we're really trying to plug into the West Midlands and East Midlands kind of manufacturing heritage as well, seeing where we can onshore a lot of manufacturing processes and things. So taking it, we're basically able to demonstrate that with funding coming through us and that support being disseminated across the network, it really does create this ecosystem that starts to grow, starts to thrive.
So are there any new collaborations or projects that you're excited about in the healthcare innovation space in the near future?
So one of the ones that Medlink Midlands have just launched is our innovation builder. So as I briefly touched on in that previous section, was about investment and seeing more investors in the region. One of the struggles, obviously, we've talked a lot about grant funding. One of the struggles is financing medtech. It's a long process bringing a health or medtech product to market, and that costs a lot of money. The route to revenue is usually a lot longer than certain other sectors. So that development and that kind of investment stage is critical. It helps them kind of cross the valley of death, that you've got the idea, you've got the prototype. How do you now get the regulatory, the trials and all of those bits before you can get to market? What we're doing with our innovation builder is working in partnership with our entrepreneur in residence Christian Kumar to, I say, take a bit more of an American style approach to investment, that we can help companies get more investor ready and actually win investment at an earlier stage to help them develop in that sort of startup sector, to help them identify exactly what's going to be needed, how much is going to be needed, and ideally at what points those are going to be needed. I think these are questions that a lot of startups don't always have the answers to. They just think very focused, this is the next thing I need to do, and this, where actually if you build that more detailed roadmap, it'd be really good. So I'm very excited to be working on that soon. We've got our first cohort coming through. There's also then a scale up one as well, so looking for maybe bigger amounts to help them grow, whether that's regionally, nationally, or internationally, when we're going to be working with them to help basically realize the best markets and grow their business that way. But actually, we're even going back to the sort of academic side of it as well, which is sort of my bread and butter. Glad to be linking in with more university to make sure that the academics, before they even while they're still doing the research, so maybe even before they've started to fully consider spinning out, making sure that there is the commercial viability, that there is the market for it, and how that they could potentially adapt their current research to make sure that that's going to be a viable thing moving forward. Because we see a lot develop something, go to the technology transfer, go to try and spin out, to find out that there isn't really a market for it there. So having those conversations early, working with them to make sure that all the work that they've put in for this research has the real world impact that it deserves to have. Academics take a lot of time spending their life on research. We want to see that in clinics. We want to see that in public health and things like that. So really working to make sure that that's identified at an early stage. So 3 sectors of that Midlands Innovation Builder, all of which come with their own challenges, but all of which I'm very excited to be working with going forward.
Yeah, that's very good. So how could the aspiring new innovator link up with Medlink to use their resources and network and this particular program?
So the first thing to do would be to just go onto the website, have a look around, see what there is in opportunities, see what there is in business support. And we've got a fantastic array of case studies as well. So you can see if there is anything around like grant funding, if there are maybe some case studies that are similar to you that maybe we could help with as well. So that would be the first bit. All of our contact details are on there as well. So you'll see lots of email addresses. Just reach out. We're always happy to respond to emails, have a bit of a diagnosis call, find out what your hurdles are, find out if there's anyone that we can kind of partner you with as well. We then do have memberships as well. So for a small fee, you can become a member, which actually then enables you to discounts from our service providers. So PDM are offering their Innovate to Zero, so supporting companies build that carbon reduction plan, think about ways to improve their sort of manufacture from an early stage. That's offered as part of the membership, as well as 2 hours free consultation with all things legal with some of our patent attorneys and IP experts, which for the £250 I think it is for annual membership now, might not even get you 2 hours with an IP lawyer to start with. So there are lots of benefits tailored to lots of different people. So we do try and help everyone in the sector, whether you're an innovator, whether you're a service provider. But then also our events program, they're always, we keep a lot of them open for networking. We want people to come along. We want to see new faces. We want to see kind of a growth of this ecosystem. I think we've got over 6,000 contacts as well. So I'm sure we'll be able to link you up to someone maybe that can support, that can answer questions that we can't, and help you continue on your innovation journey.
That is very, very good. Ben, it's been an absolute pleasure. I'm sure the people who would listen to this podcast will definitely reach out to your website. So I hope your website doesn't crash.
No, I'm sure it's fine. We're well prepared. It's recently been redone, and looking forward to it. I hope that what we've said today helps people grow, and whether it's questions around sustainability, grant funding, whatever, we're always happy to try and help where we can.
Fantastic. Thank you again.
Thank you.